Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. John Gallagher of Raven, and you're in the sick room.
I'm currently sitting here and chatting with a man of metal who has been around for nearly 40 years releasing music known as athletic rock. Uniquely given to the term to the name of the new wave of British heavy metal favourite Raven, after releasing 12 albums and various official live releases, and in this world there will never be another band quite like Raven. After yesterday's trial and error, trying to get this great man on the phone, I am finally joined here on the sick room by none other than John Gallagher of Raven. John, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's Lies and Subterfuge. My name is Frank Spencer. I'm sorry.
John, how do you feel now that it's 2013, and when you look back over the last nearly 40 years, did you ever expect you would become part of a band of such importance and still playing this music known as athletic rock?
Yeah, you just scared the crap out of me. You just said 40 years, and when you think about it, it's true. I mean, geez, me and Mark started the band when we were kids back in like 1974. So it will be our 40th anniversary next year. It's ridiculous. We'd never think in a million years, of course not.
So for those that are quite unfamiliar with the history of Raven, let's start from the beginning when you guys first started out on Hope Street, annoying the old folk on Hope Street. So for those that missed out on the earlier days of Raven, did you know that you always had this amazing talent as a vocalist and bassist and always want to be the frontman of a heavy metal band?
Well, you have to learn to play first, but I knew I had a good ear. And the more I learned to play, the more I realised when I was a kid, everything I'd heard, I'd taken in really well. So when I listen to a song or music, I'm able to, distinguish all the parts, who's doing what, the bass, the guitar, the keyboard, the drums, and how it all interlocks. So I remember getting tested when I was at school. They have these things where they play, they'll play like a 3 or 4 note chord and ask you how many notes are in the chord and nonsense to try and determine who's got musical talent. And we're like, wow, you charted off the charts and all this. You want to learn an instrument? No, thanks, I'm already playing guitar. I already came to your bullshit lessons and tried to turn it upside down, and you guys wanted no part of it, so go away. So that was kind of validation. It was like, all right, well, I know I'm going the right way. As far as singing, none of us had a clue, and of course, when you're a kid like that, learning to sing is kind of, you're really putting yourself out there. Playing guitar is easy, but singing, it's a lot more primal. And it turned out that I had this ability to do the high voice, to do the scream stuff, which, of course, when we were kids, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, all those guys, that was the deal. And then, Judas Priest, Robert Plant, that kind of thing, So all I had to do was work on actually having to do the real singing underneath it. Which, when we basically formed the band. There was 3 of us. This guy, Paul Bowden, was a guitar player as well. And we went through like 10,000 drummers up until for 3 years. And then we had a guy, Mick Kenworthy, for a couple of years. Then a guy, Sean Taylor, who ended up in the band Satan down the line. He was with us. And then we basically lost Paul Bowden to, being Mr. Party Time, and tried another guy, didn't work out, and we got Rob Hunter in on drums, and that's really when everything started to click. We'd all obviously been around the block, played a lot of working men's clubs and pubs, so we had our act together as far as going out there and playing live, and we had been, working on a stable of songs basically from the get-go. Even the first gig, we played some original songs, so we were working on that. And when Rob came in, it was just the catalyst to really make it happen. That and the idea of going as a 3-piece, which was, totally alien and crazy, but we tried it, and it was give everyone the ability to blossom. There's no passengers in a 3-piece band. Everyone's got to, really pull out all the stops, and that really helped dictate what kind of music we were going to do. It was going to be exciting, and it wasn't going to drone on,
And that, of course, was what's commonly referred to now as the new wave of British heavy metal. style. So what do you think made that style of music so attractive and effective during that time?
Well, I think that there was a lot of bands, as you know, doing this, like a generally similar thing all over England, because, you know, as is in most places, the music business is very centralised. In England, it's London, and that's it. You know, we're from Newcastle, which is like 250 miles north. We might as well be in Iceland, you know, might as well be on Mars. We were just very lucky that there was a local project studio, started a label called Neat, and put a local band out that was from our town, the Tigers of Pantang, who did well for themselves, and they had a single out, and that created quite a fuss. It's like, oh, these guys from the north of England. And then, you know, their manager asked us if we'd like to do a single, which we did, and then it all took off. And then other people in different parts of the country figured, hey, we could do the same thing. And all these bands were just basically fans of heavy music, and, you know, loving the stuff that was out there, but basically just distilling it down to, you know, the faster, crazier angle of stuff. There was, you know, there's the new wave of British heavy metal, but it owes a lot to the bands that were out at the time in, like, you know, 76, 77, 78. Judas Priest, AC/DC, Pat Travers, Rainbow, you know, all that kind of stuff. We just took little bits of what we liked from everything and just came up with our own version of it, you know, and sped it up to 78.
And from what I understand, your first radio single was actually Ozzy Osbourne heard it on the radio, and then you ended up playing 4 shows for him during 1980, along with Iron Maiden, Samson, Motorhead, and Whitesnake. Now that's a pretty big accomplishment for a band that's just had their first single. Did you have any fear of trepidation at that point during those shows that the crowd might not react too well to the new band on the bill?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we weren't green as far as that's concerned. We'd been playing the working men's clubs in the north of England, and there's no tougher audience. I mean, am I allowed to swear on the show here?
Absolutely, go for your life.
Oh, cool. That's great. Well, I mean, we play these clubs, and you do 2 sets, and usually they'd have like a, you know, like a coaster for your beer, a beer mat, and they'd write if there was requests, because, you know, you were playing cover tunes and sneaking your own stuff in. And when you play near Sunderland, which was, you know, 10 miles away, but there's a great rivalry between Newcastle and Sunderland, so they'd really rev that up. The DJ would be like, I know the boys from Newcastle, and boo. And they'd have requests. You'd read the requests on the beer mat they'd given you, would say, fuck off, you know, stuff like that. And we'd play, I remember we played a gig in Sunderland at this place called the Old 29, which was basically, you know, the space between the 2 doors that went in and out of the bar, and there was like a windowsill which was big enough to put the drums on, and we'd stand at the front. And there was a punk show cancelled. There was an outfit called the Angelic Upstarts, who were famous for kicking a pig's head round and squirting blood all over the place. They cancelled the show and all their fans came in, so it was like a riot. And, you know, you're playing with these people and you're like literally 6 inches away from their face in front of the microphone. It's like ridiculous. And we got in a thing just as we did the first single. A bunch of punks broke into our rehearsal room, tried to steal my bass, and I ended up, you know, getting into a fight with them. They all jumped on top of me and broke my wrist, and it was all great fun. So we, you know, to go and play, which we did. We played with Ozzy in London, and the audience just didn't give a shit. And, you know, we were like jumping over the orchestra pit and trying to hit them with guitars and doing our usual thing. Because with anything like that, you just learn it's like, you know, they might like you, they might hate you, but make sure they don't forget you. And if they hate you, really piss them off. That was always our thing from the get-go. And we pride ourselves on taking a lackadaisical or an apathetic audience and riling them up and winning them over. We've always done that. And it's a great challenge, and it's served us well over the years.
That's cool. And in 1981,
one of those gigs right there, just to tell you, one of those gigs was, hey, you guys, do you want to open for Whitesnake? They're playing 2 shows, and Gary Moore's G-Force is cancelled because he's broken the band up. And we weren't advertised, and basically the guy comes on and goes, Gary Moore can't be here tonight, here's Raven. You know, boo, 3,000 people booing you, and we'd win them over.
Awesome. And in 1981, you released the album Rock Until You Drop, which I think was your first full-length, which is an absolute effort and endurance listening to in its entirety. And when you went into the writing of this album, what did you hope to achieve, or did you expect that this particular album would help to define the, I guess, thrash metal genre as it's known now?
No, it was just the songs we were playing. And it took a little longer because we were doing it at odd hours. And then even at that stage, we weren't really happy with Me Too. We were trying to, see if there was a chance of getting either major label interest or something. And it never really worked out because most of those people were all assholes anyway. They only jumped into the bandwagon, 2 or 3 years later. But so you can actually hear the progression. I mean, the earlier songs like Over the Top, and I think even Hell Patrol is pretty early. And then the later songs that were recorded, like For the Future and the Sweet Medley, it almost sounds to me like a different band. Rob's playing the drums totally differently. Sounds are a little better. We've got slightly different equipment, and there's a real progression. You can hear it. It's the same band, but it's progressing rapidly. So really, I mean, there was no great scheme. It was like, we're going to do an album and we're going to put the best songs we have on it, and we just wanted to showcase what we can do, which is that whole blend of rock and roll, heavy metal, craziness, melody, songcraft, musicianship, and pure noise mixed in as well.
And then, speaking of progression, after a few years, you signed to the record label at Atlantic Records, and after that, Raven's sound sort of, I guess, changed quite dramatically with the debut album Stay Hard. And it seemed that the band at that time had dropped the athletic rock phenomenon that had won the original fan base, and you kind of went into a more pop direction, I suppose, which ultimately caused a lot of fans to abandon Raven, and I guess inadvertently alienated Raven at the same time, which was seen in the decline of record sales. How did that make you feel? I'm sure you must have noticed, or were you simply trying to do something new and it just didn't work?
Well, Stay Hard isn't really that different. It's a real natural progression from All for One. It's really not that different at all. Some bright spark at the marketing division decided to airbrush us so we looked like fashion models on the back, which is a lot of fun. But other than that, that's a natural progression. The album that really brought the camel's back was The Pack Is Back, just because it was, our drummer at the time, Rob, was, he was really the pop guy in the band, and there was a lot of emphasis on writing songs based on melodies rather than riffs. And then it was done to a click track, which this band, it's the only album we've ever done to a click track, and we'll never do it again. Because it just sucks the life out of the push and pull. There's got to be some ebb and flow in the time and the feeling, because, otherwise it turns into disco. It's just bam, 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 bam. Which is what a lot of music today sounds like when you have a lot of the thrash and death bands either using programmed drums or what amounts to be programmed drums when they have everything triggered and they're playing to a click track. It just sounds mechanical and inhuman. You got to have that push and pull, and that was a little bit too squeaky clean. There's a couple of good songs on it, but there's a couple of real stinkers as well. And at that point, we just rethought what we were doing. It's like, well, we were young, we were over in America, basically, living on next to nothing. Any money that was being generated was either being stolen or given away to, other people in the organization. So basically, we were just, well, you guys should be happy to be out on tour and you'll make money on the records. Well, that never happens. And us, along with a lot of other people, I mean, it's quite amazing. You go out and do a 30-day tour and you are lucky to make $20 a day. It's just, scandalous, put it that way, when you've got roadies making $300 and $400 a week.
That must
At the time.
That must have been quite...
So, I mean, naive, young and stupid and just happy to be out there doing it, you know. So, it's the way it is. I mean, you either, you know, if you're smart enough, you're a businessman and a musician, and sometimes you got to learn that the hard way. So we did. And like you say, especially back then, it wasn't the way it is now with the internet and stuff, where you've got instant feedback from your fans. Back then, it was the kind of thing that would, you know, seep in gradually, because when we played live shows, it was still as crazy, if not crazier than ever. So it really, by the time it sunk into us, the music was changing, getting a lot more obnoxious, and, you know, it was definitely a case of like, what, are you glam, or are you full-out thrash or death metal? And obviously we were in the middle ground of that, because we were heavy and crazy and thrashy, but we were, and always have been, melodic. And it was almost a dirty word. That's when the Cookie Monster singers started coming out and all that stuff, you know. So we basically just said, sod everyone, we'll just stick to our guns and do what we like. And over time, it's served us well.
That's cool. And speaking of touring, how was the, for those in New Zealand or just generally in the world listening to this interview, how was it touring with Metallica during the All For One tour, knowing the crowds Metallica produced, especially during that era? Did you have any fear of it going completely wrong or out of hand, knowing Metallica's reputation?
Well, they didn't have a reputation, because that tour was their first tour and they opened for us.
Oh, okay. So I must have got my notes wrong there. I'm sure they must have...
No, that's what it was. We came over to America to do our first tour, and Johnny Z, who was our manager at the time, said, I've got you the biggest band in San Francisco to open for you. Like, Y&T? And they're like, no, Metallica. Like, who? So you played as a cassette tape, and it sounded like Motorhead. Played it like, you know, 78 on an old record player. Like, oh, well, these guys sound crazy. And that was their first tour. And they went out, and basically, you'll see it in the DVD we're putting together, we'll talk about later. I mean, I've only seen bits of it, but Lars speaks very nicely and explains how, you know, they went to school. They learned from watching us, because we'd done it before and this was their first tour. So they learned a lot from that, which is pretty cool. And they were crazy young kids, and there was 17 people in the whole touring organization in a 6-berth bus, which was just insane. It was absolutely insane. Guerrilla warfare. We toured America and basically opened it up, because there's an awful lot of people saw those gigs and got inspired to form their own bands, or to, you know, get off their arses and be more dedicated to what they're doing. People like Pantera and all that came out of seeing that show and going, wow, I want to do something. Which is amazing to hear after all these years, you know.
I'm sure there must have been a few anecdotes or hilarious moments that you could have picked out on that tour. Is there anything that you can tell the fans about some funny moments on that tour?
Oh, jeez. Most of them are unprintable, unfortunately. But, one of them was pretty funny, and actually a photograph came up on the internet recently which almost documents it. We were playing on that tour. We were in, I think it was Buffalo, New York. So it was Metallica, then Raven, and then Motorhead. What a great bill, huh? 2 gigs like that. That was Buffalo and Rochester. So the dressing room was basically the kitchen in this huge club. And at one point it was real quiet, and me and somebody else, one of the roadies and my brother, walked into this room, and out of nowhere the freezer opens. It was a walk-in freezer. It just opens, and out comes Lemmy with a huge box of pita bread. Like, what are you doing with that? And he goes, well, you got to steal something, haven't you? Pretty wild. But, I mean, other than that, it was a constant barrage of us throwing shit at Metallica to wake them up and get them out of bed and get them moving, because when they weren't asleep, they were drinking. So they started real early. But it was a trip, and it was great. I got real good memories of Cliff. He was an old soul on young shoulders and a really good player. And we'd sit there and trade bass riffs and ideas and chordal things and stuff, and he was really cool.
Did you ever hope to collaborate with Cliff on any music?
Not really. We'd just sit there and talk about some bands we'd heard, who we liked, and just sitting. I just remember one night just sitting there playing basses and just saying, what's this chord, and what if you did this, and just screwing around. He had a good knowledge of theory, good knowledge of harmony.
That's cool.
So it was pretty cool. He's one of the few guys I've met who actually really knew his way around a bass guitar,
That's cool. And in 2009, you released your latest album, Walk Through Fire, which is an amazing album. And how has the initial reception of this album been since its initial release date?
Well, it's been amazingly positive. I mean, it kind of like stretched out because it came out 2009 in Japan, and then came out in Europe and America in 2010. It's because we didn't have the labels we wanted at the same time. Obviously, you want to try and release it worldwide at the same time, and it just unfortunately didn't work out that way. But we were real happy with the album. We knew it was good. It just had that magic. It had the spark. Everything flowed well. It had the energy. It had great sounds. We ran into this producer, engineer, Kevin 131, who's just a monster and just totally understands what we're doing. He's got the technical end. I mean, this is the first time we recorded with like Pro Tools and all the new digital toys and that. And it was great. I mean, our whole thing with this was there was so much preparation, which we normally didn't have, just because in 2001 my brother had like a terrible accident and nearly died, nearly lost his legs. It took him a long time to rehabilitate himself, and of course during all that time, well, I was just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And then when he finally started getting it together, we just started whittling everything down, picking the cream of the crop, getting that together. And then when we went to record, of course, we just had these songs, just like, bang them out, 1, 2, 3, which is kind of the way we always did it. It was just a little bit more thought beforehand and afterwards. Because once it was recorded, we'd, leave it for a couple of weeks and then start listening, going, okay, do we need to add any, fairy dust, as it were, a little bit of overdub here, a bit of stuff there, sound effect there, and do that, and then mix it, and then sit on it and check back and go, it needs to be tweaked. We basically just took our time and tweaked it till we were happy with it, which was great to be in that position, as opposed to like, you've got 2 weeks record, and then it's done, and then get it on the road again, type of thing. So it really paid off, and it really just put us in a good position for the next one. It really has. And it was just great to have that reception where people just seem to get it. And we could turn around and moan, going, yeah, well, we meant plenty of great albums before and nobody gave a shit, but they gave a shit about this one, so that was great.
And how has Raven coped now that it's almost 40 years since the original starting point in today's modern world of metal? Do you find that there is still a place for this type of music, such as living in America being so trend-driven? Do you ever find people saying, oh, there's no room for this kind of music today, or do you find getting any comments like that?
Well, I don't hear any comments like that. I mean, basically, that whole trend-driven thing is just, it's always been the same, one way or another. It's always been the same. It was always terrible in England, and still look down their nose at rock bands and stuff like that. So it was always an underground core audience, and it's basically the same the world over. The metal fans, the underdog, is usually a lot smarter than anybody else, and it's usually, they know what they like, and they want the real thing. And we're in the position now where we are the elder statesmen. It's like, we know how to do it right. When you play, you see a drummer like Joe play, I mean, there's chops, there's snare rudiments, there's the way he approaches the kit. You can see, oh, here's a guy that's listened to people from, like Blue Cheer onwards, and taken in everything they've done and developed his own style out of that. And there's not many players like that. And my brother is a total one-off on guitar.
Oh,
To
absolutely.
me, he's so inventive and so crazy. This is a guy that will just literally just do something off the wall in the middle of a song because he's got that freedom to do that. You watch some of the videos, the guitar will just go flying at the most inopportune moment, and it's just it's like lightning in a bottle. He just comes up with stuff out of thin air, and he's got that melodic side about his lead playing when he wants to do it. Otherwise, he's as crazy as Blackmore. He's if not crazier, and and I pride myself on playing out of the box, playing weird instruments. I play a lot of 8-string and solo on a Explorer bass with a tremolo arm with lots of feedback and noise and stuff. So it's we got our own thing. We're the best Raven style band there is.
Oh, that's awesome. And now that it's 2013, like, and you look back over the last 40 years, if you could change anything over the last 40 years, or tell a young John not to do this or not to do that, was there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, probably not be so trusting in certain people, that's for sure. Try to look for the best in what goes on, and sometimes it bites you in the ass. But that's life. You got to learn that the hard way sometimes. There's other people who are complete assholes, and they'll distrust everybody from the get-go. And I mean that's its own trip doing that. But we're incredibly lucky to be able to do what we're doing, to be able to continue doing what we're doing, and there's still an awful lot of music in this band. We still have as much fun, if not more, now than we ever did, because I think we appreciate it more now. We just live for just walking up on that stage and just cranking out that first note and jumping around like freaking crazed ferrets.
Did you realise that you had an audience as far as New Zealand and as Australia and New Zealand?
To be honest, not too much. There's a couple of guys that were like pen pals. Some of my friends over here have been over from Australia, and they were crazy metal fans. And I know there's a big audience for metal. They have those what they call the day out or whatever they call these big festivals they have there.
Big Day Out, yeah.
Yeah, Big Day Out and stuff like that. Which is awesome. I remember seeing video back in the day of Thin Lizzy playing by Sydney Opera House and all that stuff. So there's obviously, you guys have obviously got good taste, so we're really pushing to try and get over and visit New Zealand and visit Australia, because I mean it's something I've always wanted to do outside of music, but to do it in a musical vein would be just excellent. It'd be really cool.
That's cool. Now, as I mentioned during the intro of the show, we're coming to the end of the interview because I'm sure you're a very busy guy and we won't take up too much more of your time. So after releasing 12 albums and various official live releases, touring all over the world, how would you describe your career with Raven in one word?
Frantic.
And just before we go, John, can we get a radio ID from you if possible?
Yes, indeed.
That's cool.
So we put it down as the Sick Room, right?
That's correct, yeah. It's a bit of an outrageous name for a radio show, but it's got to be different.
Okay, you ready?
Yep, go for it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. John Gallagher of Raven, and you're in the Sick Room.
Awesome. Cheers for that, John. All right, John, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and we hope to see you down here in New Zealand very soon.
Excellent, man. Let's hope so.
All right. Thanks, John.
You bet. Take care, Bill.
Thanks.